Hello and welcome to the Lynn Lowdown. I'm Dani Vittori, and today we have on Senator Brendan Crighton from the Massachusetts State Senate. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Dani. Appreciate you having me on.
You were here to talk about things on a lot of people's minds, the mitigation plan for the Sumner Tunnel that you and the delegation have been working on.
Absolutely. So it's obviously a big inconvenience for so many riders across the North Shore, but really across Greater Boston. Something that's been on our mind for quite some time. Obviously, the Sumner's close to 100 years old. It needs to be replaced. They've been doing weekend closures for quite some time, causing huge disruptions at Logan. But coming into this year, at the beginning of the year, it was planned for a 4-month shutdown of the tunnel. So the delegation, Rep. Cahill, Rep. Capano, Rep. Armenian, Rep. Wong, myself, reached out to our new governor, Maura Healey, and their team and said, quite frankly, we're not ready for this. Four-month shutdown with really no mitigation in place. So looking for alternative sources, increased subway, affordable subway, commuter rail, and ferry. We had none of that lined up. So I really applaud the Healey-Driscoll administration for listening to us, for working with us. Almost immediately after that call, they shortened it from 4 months to 2 months. Granted, you have another summer for that, but that's some of our lowest traffic impact during July and August. And then shortly thereafter, they implemented a working group to really focus on mitigation, which I think they knocked it out of the park. No matter what, this is going to be a headache, but we needed to make sure that riders had different options. And really excited about the ferry, the Blue Line, as well as the commuter rail.
You said there were a lot of different options. I mean, I rode the ferry just kind of for fun the other day, and is now a viable option for commuters to use.
Absolutely. I mean, 34 minutes for $2.40 each way, free parking, really for a commute that prior to the Sumner Tunnel would be over an hour from our station into the State House. So you really cut down on your trip time. It's an enjoyable ride. You can sit back, read a book, enjoy your breakfast, enjoy the views. It's really a great way to travel, and longer term really makes a lot of sense as a transportation option. Certainly helps increase economic development in the area, as well as housing production, and just that economic mobility to make sure that folks can get where they need to go in a quick time.
And another thing that you mentioned too was some of the things that the MBTA had done. There were some reduced fares, some of the free Blue Line at certain times, so that was also another option?
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that we should have in normal times anyways, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, so many folks on the North Shore can't afford that $7 one-way trip from a commuter rail station. Again, a commuter rail station that is now closed in Lynn. Again, working on that separately, but reducing it to $2.40 makes it a reasonable way for folks to get to work. And then on the ferry end, again, $2.40, and Blue Line, free Blue Line, which is really unprecedented, as well as a significant reduction in their parking along the Blue Line, so it's only $2. So really viable alternatives for the summer, but also things we want to see considered for the future as well.
And it's you, and you mentioned several representatives. How did you all work together to create this mitigation plan that, like you said, not only is used for now, but could be, options for the future? Absolutely.
So I mentioned mostly the Lynn reps, but we've certainly been working with all of the entire North Shore, so from Boston up, to really make the case that anytime you're going to close down a mode of transportation, there needs to be mitigation. And one area we saw that fail again was when the Lynn station, commuter rail station, was closed. The delegation stepped up, was able to prolong it for a certain period of time, but obviously some safety issues with the station came up and we had to close it. But it's inexcusable that the previous administration had no plans in place at all for mitigation. So we were left with a shuttle that takes us backwards against the direction you're going to Swampscott, additional time to commute. And even at the time, they weren't offering reduced fares. So we really need to get a temporary platform in place at the commuter rail to restore full service there. Something the delegation is very committed on. But again, for our riders, we feel your frustration. We are very, very frustrated by how we've been treated in terms of transportation access and transit access throughout our history here in Lynn.
And you mentioned too, how long did it take you to create this plan? You mentioned the beginning of this year.
So we started talking, I mean, as soon as we knew the Sumner was closing, it was, all right, so what are our options? And immediately, we looked back to the ferry, and the ferry had been here previously, going back a decade ago. Mayor and Senator McGee, Senator McGee at the time, had worked with the city, Jim Cowdell, EDIC, to really advance that project to build a top-notch, brand new ferry terminal. We had 2 years of service, and then when Governor Baker came in, he ended service there. But the enthusiasm we've seen from the riders, as well as transportation officials, our elected leaders here, continues to drive that issue. And we were able to secure over $1 million in legislation last year to go towards this specific operation. And moving forward, I think we need to look towards the water, and not just in Lynn, but the entire coastline. We're one of the few states or places in the country that doesn't utilize its water for transportation. And when you think of the costs associated with rolling stock, the trains you need, the tracks, the right-of-ways that come with running a public transportation system on the subway, bus, or commuter rail end, very expensive to operate. You go to the water, the water's there, right? You just need to more or less pay for operations and making sure your equipment's up to grade. So in the future, we'd love to see this continue. It shouldn't just be a 2-summer thing. And the ridership numbers have been huge down there already, and we haven't even seen the full impact of the Sumner Tunnel just yet.
Like you said, too, it's more certain other ways are more expensive, but it's also like even driving in Boston, it's a bit of a disaster now, I won't even lie. So if you have an alternative that's cleaner energy and just overall more efficient, why not use it?
Absolutely. I think, the stress alone from someone that commuted to Boston regularly, and it is hopping on the ferry, it's a whole different world. And again, I think here on the North Shore, we have a fairly robust bus service, but when it comes to near rapid or rapid transit, we've really been shortchanged. The ferry is a step in the right direction. We need that temporary platform for our commuter rail station, but we also need to look to a commuter rail that's more fit for today's modern age and our workforce today. So it's really designed using old equipment, again, spewing diesel and particulate matter into the air, obviously harming the environment and the public health of everyone along that line. If we're able to electrify this line, which we continue to push for as a delegation in the city as well with Mayor Nicholson and the City Council, to create almost a subway type system around that line, trips every 7 to 10 minutes, more reliable trips, more frequent obviously, and more affordable. That's a real solution, I think, long term for an area that is just stuck in some of the worst traffic in the country, if not the world.
Yeah. And you said, from some experience as well, you are a Lynner. You've had to commute to Boston like so many of us, so you've seen it from experience.
Absolutely. Just one quick tidbit that really illustrates the point of how bad traffic was. This was before the pandemic. My wife went to take a trip. She was going into Boston. I don't know why I put her keys on top of her car. I think I opened up the car door. Maybe I was warming up the car for her and being a nice husband. I left them there by accident. She called me when she was in Boston and said, I can't find my keys. I can't find my keys. I started running through the neighborhood. Where did they fall off? I'm running down the street. Turns out they were on top of the car for her entire commute. So an hour all the way in, there's no rack there either. They just sat right where they were because she's going, 2 miles an hour, 3 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour. There's just so much traffic from, all the way up, through Marblehead certainly, but where we get off on the Linway, all the way until you get through the Sumner Tunnel. All the way once you're in Boston. The only solution, or the most viable solution to getting rid of traffic is to invest in public transportation, public transit, like you're seeing now with the ferry, but we need to do a much better job and to really address this issue with the sense of urgency I think it demands.
And the Sumner Mitigation Plan, that's a huge step. That's a great thing that delegations been able to push through. But you said you're looking towards the future, so do you see this as like one step in a larger plan?
Absolutely. I think it helped us get our foot in the door, but the ridership we've seen already, I think, demonstrates that this should be a long-term service here in Lynn. And with that, certainty, riders will start to shift. You can't change your mode of transportation if you think it's going to be here for a couple months and gone for good. If we were able to have the ferry from May through October, like every other ferry service here in the Commonwealth, I think people would use it as a viable alternative during those months, and it would create tremendous opportunities for Lynn. And just on the Sumner end again, I don't want to act like it's going to be all rosy and everything's going to go smoothly. We're tracking this day to day. I just got off a conference call with state transportation leaders. They really, the Haley Driscoll administration has really zoomed in on this to make sure that it's going to be a headache, but we're going to make sure that we're doing everything we can to reroute traffic, to track it in real time. Right now, again, we are encouraging folks to the extent they can to use public transportation. It will lead to a shorter commute for you. In the first 2 weeks, traffic hasn't been, it's unbearable, but it has not been a complete disaster. We expect it's going to be more and more difficult as we head into this. So again, please consider using public transportation while we have some of these reductions in fares in place, as well as increased frequency.
So as you're saying, some of the things that the public can do are using these options to try and help mitigate some of the traffic.
I mean, I think it's like you said, the ferry is an enjoyable ride. It depends where you work, right? It's not going to work for everyone. No. But for those that can, and you can get to your destination faster than you could by road, it makes sense. Just give it a try. And, certainly we encourage folks that have questions, concerns, criticism, certainly. Call our office. We want to work with you. This is something brand new for the Commonwealth. We have not shut down the Sumner Tunnel for this period of time, length of time and duration in generations, right, since its construction. So we really need to work together, and would love to hear from folks on this or any other issue.
Definitely. And I know for our time we are going to have to wrap up in a moment, but is there anything else that you wanted to mention about the plan or what's happening that I hadn't gone over?
I think just, again, I know you've covered everything great. Dani, thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to come on to share this and the great resource that you guys have here. It's been really helpful for us to get the message out on this and other issues. I think just, again, we're tracking it day to day. Something as small as, a breakdown one of these lanes could disrupt the traffic even more. So it's not going to be without pain, but we feel that though the T has struggled greatly over this past year, and believe me, we're happy to hear those criticisms as well, that right now we have a system in place for the Blue Line, for the commuter rail line, and for the ferry that will make for a much easier commute for anyone coming north of Boston.
And I want to thank you again for coming on to talk about it and share that message.
Thank you so much.
And once again, my name is Dani Vittori. This has been the Lynn Lowdown, and we'll see you next week with more guests.